Today I'll be teaching you 2 ways to paint wood on your miniatures. So let us waste no time on introductions and start with the beginner's approach. For this, we want to start from a smooth and even finish. 2 thin coats will do the trick, and from there we can move on to dry brushing to make all the texture pop. By this point, I'm sure most of you know how to dry brush, but there are a couple of things to keep in mind to improve your results. On one hand, we want to make sure to dry brush exclusively in the opposite direction of the wood grain. This will ensure that no paint gets into the recesses, and that we get the most definition out of this step. On the other hand, something that has become more common knowledge as of late but is still worth mentioning is to avoid unloading the paint from the brush on a paper towel, as this will suck out most of the moisture from your brush and lead to those dusty finishes that don't look smooth at all. Instead, use a texture palette or, in my case, an MDF board that has already cut many layers of paint from priming and previous dry brushes. This will make it so that you don't lose that moisture and get a smoother finish. But when dry brushing, don't treat the whole surface the same. After my first overall layer, a second, lighter one was applied towards the top half and bottom center of the shield to create volume. Applying multiple layers one over the other in the exact same place won't do much in terms of color transition. And since I just burned it up, if any transitions from one color to the next looks a bit sloppy, don't worry, as everything will be blended through an overall wash of brown. Both washing and dry brushing will be the only techniques used for this shield. But just like we were smart about how we applied the lighter dry brush layers to create volume, we'll do the same with the washes. I'll follow up the first wash with the second one, this time mixing in a pinch of black wash into the brown, and this darker wash will be applied towards the bottom half of the shield. Creating a smooth transition into it is as simple as rinsing the brush with some water and feathering the edge of the wash with a clean brush towards the opposite direction. Once that was dry, I enhanced the contrast even further with another pass of darker wash to make it more intense, but only on the very bottom of the shield, which, again, I faded into a smooth transition the same way as before. Finally, since the initial overall brown wash toned down my highlights, I reapplied my brightest color once again, but only on the very top of the shield to bring back the shine. I did this in a triangular shape towards the center, which creates a more dynamic and interesting light than a simple top to bottom transition. This leaves us with a beautiful wooden shield that has both contrast and smooth transitions, achieved using only 2 beginner-friendly techniques with a simple twist. However, for those looking for something more detailed for that one special model or for those up to the challenge, let's have a look at the advanced approach. Again, I'll be starting from a smooth and even finish, but our first step will be to cover the whole surface with a layer of water. This will set the stage for a technique I call the water trick. Basically, I will dilute the dark brown paint 3:1 with water, and let it flow naturally into the recesses with a simple touch of the brush, all thanks to the watery layer we laid down before. This technique is perfect for pin washing, and allows us to set some very defined shadows while keeping the base coat untouched. Moving on to the highlights, here is where the real brushwork and detail comes in. But don't worry, this step will be easier if you follow this trick. By unloading the excess paint from the brush so it doesn't flow into the recesses, and by using the side of the brush to highlight, there is no possible way for the paint to go anywhere other than the raised details. But where the difference from the beginner's approach truly lies is in moving forward with those highlights, and adding texture within the texture that's already there. Of course, the side of the brush won't take us all the way to the finish line, and that's where a firm grip and a sharp brush tip becomes our best friends. The water trick, however, can be used at any point to correct any mistakes, so we always have a failsafe at hand. When it comes to the placement of the highlights as well as the extra texture, you'll see that once again I am focusing on the top half of the shield, as well as a bit towards the center of the bottom half. I also added a very strong highlight along the edges of the different planks. This, as well as some of the other highlights, might look a bit too striking at first, but just like the washes in the beginner's approach helped us blend everything together, our next step will serve the same purpose. This time though, we'll use glazes. Our paint will be diluted 3:1 with water, and making sure not to pick up too much, I'll spread it evenly along the surface, taking extra care that the glaze doesn't pull anywhere like a wash would. We want it to remain even so it works as a filter. But why use a glaze instead of a wash like before? Well, this is where we break the mold of just using brown and black washes, and experiment with color. Like I did with a glaze of Japanese uniform on the top half of the shield, to both blend the tones and increase the brightness of the area. And not just experiment with color, but also placement. When glazing some dark browns on the bottom of the shield, I chose a diagonal approach to break the usual top to bottom transition and create a more dynamic light. Finally, I took the opportunity to push the detail even further and add some chromatic variation by introducing subtle green tones to enhance the storytelling, hinting at wood that's starting to rot. All of these glazes were feathered in the exact same way as in the beginner's approach, using a brush freshly rinsed in water while the paint was still wet. Thank you for watching all the way till the end. I would love to hear what other textures and materials you'd like to see me cover following this format. If you found this video helpful, comment your suggestions down below.